that fear of the unknown, the fear of being laid off, that can consume you.
Welcome back to the Career Therapy Podcast. My name is Martin McGovern, and today we have another episode in the Life After Layoff series, welcoming Alexis Rago. Alexis, according to your LinkedIn, it says you are the founder of Marketing Mana, creating powerful connections between small businesses and customers through strategic marketing and plans. But we always like to put people in the hot seat and ask them the most commonly asked interview questions. So, Alexis, tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you, Martin, for having me. You and I don't know how long we've known each other, 10 years, something like that. It's from a long time ago. And I've just like, I always remember just connecting with you. And I'm so glad that you're doing this podcast. So I was born and raised in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And that's where Marketing Mana comes from. So I'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the things that really stuck with me through Hawaii is really a melting pot of America. Like truly, everybody celebrates Chinese New Year. Everybody celebrates Boys and Girls Day, which is a traditional Japanese holiday. I'm not Japanese, but I celebrated it, because that's what we did. We embraced each other's culture, and it was so beautiful. And that really had a huge impact in my life. That combined with my parents being in advertising, and I showed them. I went into marketing.
Fighting the system.
I'm never going to be an advertiser. Oh, wait, I ended up in marketing. Yeah. So that's always a good chuckle. But I mean, I was just always surrounded by it. I remember my dad, when I was growing up, and he was timing his commercials to make sure that they were within that 30-second frame, from a voiceover perspective. Born and raised in Hawaii, love the outdoors, love culture, love understanding people, love differences and celebrating all of those things, love the warm weather. As we sit here I'm in Naperville, and it's cold outside. Well, it's warm, right? It's 50s. But it's just like, that's just part of who I am, and really always looking for new experiences. And that happened in my career too. So I actually went to undergrad at Brandeis University out in a suburb of Boston, and I was a theater arts major. Because why not?
Yeah, it's fun.
And then yeah, it totally is. And then I lived up and down the East Coast. I was a physical inventory auditor at one point. I worked for agencies. I worked for Jack Morton, an experiential agency in New York City. I was at NBC Page at one point.
No way.
I was.
That's awesome.
In New York City, yeah. And then worked for agencies, and then wanted a more altruistic route. And so I was actually a logistics director for the Avon Breast Cancer 3-Day Walk, which was produced by Pallotta Teamworks at that point. And then one day, one of my friends said, "Hey, you would like business school. You should check it out." And I was like, "Oh, what? Okay, I'll try it." And so I looked into it, and I studied, I did a lot of studying for the GMAT, and I did really well, and applied to 6 schools. I got into 3, and chose University of Michigan. Back
Nice.
then it was actually called University of Michigan Business School. Now it's called the Ross School of Business. But that's where I ended up going in Ann Arbor. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Came in thinking I was going to be a consultant. And within a few weeks, I got a taste of the sexy side of branding. Oh yeah. I mean, they come in and they talk to you, and, you get excited about all these companies. I'm like, I want to be a brand manager. Mm-hmm. So shifted and actually wound up getting, so Michigan doesn't technically have, like specialties, or we have specialties, right? So it's like, I specialized in corporate strategy and marketing strategy, and absolutely loved that route that I took. So came out in 2003, which was the middle of the dot-com bust.
Oh my.
So yeah, I had never experienced layoffs. And so what I experienced was that year, our graduating class, I think it was less than 50% of us had job offers upon graduation. which is crazy because
Yeah.
Michigan's a top 10 business school. And usually it's like 80 or 90% have job offers and the rest of them are entrepreneurs. And so I had to work my way up. And so, it took a little time, but within, I don't know, about 8 months of graduating, I joined Mintel and I got into the global new products database. So I was looking at trends for packaged goods because that's how I needed to get into CPG or consumer packaged goods. And then I got into Alberto Culver and I was on the Resumé brand team where I learned a ton. And eventually left there because my husband, who was back then just a boyfriend, well, he got a job offer down to be an on-site agency at Burger King in Miami. Cool, except there's no brand marketing in South Florida. So I basically did career suicide at that point. Yeah. But, good men are hard to find. So I followed him down. I'm still married, so I don't think I should regret the choice.
I think it worked out as a good choice.
Yeah, I think it worked out, 13 years later, crazy. So I got into digital marketing. That was my entry into it. And worked for Sapient, got a lot of experience, doing landing pages, websites, whatever it was. I got my feet wet in it. And then I had my first kid. Now, actually, let me back up.
Sure.
So in 2007, so I joined Sapient in 2006. And in 2007, I was working, my client was City Home Equity and City Mortgage. You might see where I'm going with this. And then my first kid, he was born in February of 2008. So when I left, we had just pitched City this great project. Oh my God, this website was going to be phenomenal. I mean, breaking down silos, being the trusted brand, all of these great things. And they were green lighting us. And then all of a sudden things kind of paused. And this was in the fall of 2007. So I go off, I have my baby in February of 2008. And when I left, I was a senior account person. There was another senior account person. There were 2 junior account people and 3 creatives on these 2 Citibank accounts.
It's a big team. Okay.
Sizable account. Yeah. We were responsible for 25% of the revenue of the office. And then I came back in May and there was 1 junior account person left.
Oh my gosh.
Because of the crisis.
Yeah. That's when I graduated. I graduated in 2010.
Yeah. So this was 2008. This was right before when it all burst. It all just crumbled. And so Sapient had a number of layoffs. And in December, it was my time. So December of 2008, I was part of the 10% of the global workforce that was just cut. And I was even now, my heart is tightening, my chest is tightening a little bit. And, did I see the writing on the wall? A little bit, but I had never been through it. So I didn't really truly recognize all of the signs for what it was.
Looking back, what were some of them?
So in the agency world, right, you have to track your time, right? You need a job code. And I wasn't getting they weren't giving me job codes, but they were expecting me to do the work.
Ooh, interesting.
And it was really high up. And I was what? No, I want to do the work, but I need to code my time. So help me. There were maybe just not being included in meetings. The rest of my team had either they left on their own accord, I don't know if any of them were laid off while I was on maternity leave, but they were all just either redirected or some people had left. And that was really upsetting because it was an amazing team, still to this day, one of my most favorite teams I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
You're asking a woman who So you don't have kids yet. The first year of your kid's life, you don't sleep that much, Martin. So I don't really truly remember a whole bunch during that time, but
Fair.
I'm sure that there were more signs that I'm just not thinking about.
Fair.
But it was just like everybody, the whole financial crisis that was crumbling all the markets. And the first place that people cut is their marketing budget.
That always happens. Like that is the common theme in the marketing world that everyone gets nervous about. It's like copywriters and like creatives go first, then the account people, and then the whole marketing team sometimes, and things like that. So keep going with that.
And it's a mistake. It's
Mhm.
a mistake, right? Because so back then there was a lot of supply and not a lot of demand in the housing market, right? However, there's still, people still need services. People still have mortgages to pay. People are still looking for, better rates if they were there, which I don't think they were. So to companies that believe that the first thing you cut is marketing, you got to spend some. You've got to continue to put your brand out there. I mean, if the most established brands like Coke and Nike and Disney are still advertising after all of these years, that just shows you need to feed it, right? You need to continue. It might look different. You may have a different message, but it's so important to always market whatever it is you're selling, however big you are or however small you are. So that's one of the, companies think they're trimming the fat.
Right. And one thing I really want to hit on that, because I'm so glad you mentioned it, is individuals also need to continually put themselves out there and market themselves. And one of the things that I'm trying to dispel with this podcast is the idea of job security. I don't really believe in job security. I don't believe it's a thing. And like you said, if Coca-Cola and Nike are still buying billboards and bus stops, when everyone literally in the world has heard of their brand, that means you have to stay top of mind and you have to be on your game if you want to be able to compete. And that's, I think that's just a very, important thing for people to realize and hear, because layoffs happen and we don't want to be a brand with no awareness in a way, to put it a little bit too facetiously, but you see where I'm going with that.
Absolutely. And a job search can be a full-time job.
Yeah.
And then when you're getting up to speed at a new job, that's like, the fire hose, right? Coming at you. And, you're learning new systems, processes, teams, what a product, service, right? Offering. You're learning all of those new things, but it's so important to stay in touch with your network throughout the years so that you can reach out and be like, hey, you just had your 200th podcast. Congratulations, But that's what it is. It's taking the time to say, hey, I see you, I care about you, and I think what you're doing is really cool and it's really important.
Speaking of, I found our introductory email.
Did you?
Paula introduced us, so shouts to Paula.
That's
I haven't talked to Paula in forever. In 2013, May of 2013.
Okay, so only 7 years. Only 7 years.
But it's so crazy. It's like, good morning, Martin and Alexis. I love it.
But that's how it starts, right?
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that. And the thing is, people want to help other people.
Yeah.
So many times I've been in places where layoffs have happened and there are good people, sometimes it feels personal. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just the nature of the beast, an acquisition happens and whoever is acquired, well, there are personal choices and personal relationships on the other side.
Right.
So, it's never pretty. And honestly, I think when I think back on my career and I think back on my layoffs, plural, there were times when I thought maybe I shouldn't be in marketing. And then there were times when I thought, this is the good swift kick in the ocole that I need to take my career further because I know I can do more.
Really quick,
Yeah.
I want to rewind just a little bit. When you went through that first layoff, how did it happen? Like, what were the logistics of it a little bit? Because one of the things, because you mentioned you've been through a few of these, I almost want to compare and contrast how the layoffs went down, because that's one of the things people are most scared of. And a big thing that I've been harping on lately is to get away from hoping things go right in life to just getting really good at responding when things go wrong. And knowing all the different ways things can happen help us prepare for the eventualities. So what when you actually had that first layoff there, how did they go about it? They tap you on the shoulder? Was it an email, a phone call? I don't think we had
I think
Zoom
it was
back
a
then.
meeting. I think it was a meeting appeared on my calendar.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I think it was one of those. And it was a small agency. We were like 100 people or so. So everybody knew the HR person, and she and I had a great relationship. I'm trying to remember, I may have called in sick that day or something, or worked from home or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And not because of that.
Right. Okay.
So it may have been over the phone. On top of that, my manager actually worked out of New York and I was in Miami. So there was definitely a phone element to it. But they handled it with grace. They really, truly did. They set me up with one of those, like a what do they call it? Those firms, that help you with your resume, and like an outplacement firm. And I think it was one of the big ones. And they gave me a month's notice, which was really nice. So it wasn't, and I think my manager at one point encouraged me to do a job search during the workday, I was like, no, I need to do my work, So
that's interesting.
It was,
that is really interesting.
I didn't want to leave people, in a bad place.
Right.
But I did, so it was, they really did it with as much grace as possible. And, my manager did act as a reference for a while.
Great.
So, it was what it was. What it did was 3 months later, I found a job and was able to move back to Chicago.
Awesome.
And we had our first son at that point, and my parents were in Chicago. So that was the kick we needed. That was the kick we needed to get back home.
And that's great that it only took you 3 months. What do you think set you apart to be able to get it done? I mean, 3 to 6 months is the average pre-pandemic, but what do you think you did to really set yourself up for success during that change?
Well, come on, I'm awesome, right?
Yeah, you got motivated mom right in your Twitter name. Yeah, I love it.
So what did I do? I mean, honestly, I really did a lot. I mean, when I was at Sapient, I was helping actually get bills paid, like millions of dollars of invoices paid. I established processes. I helped the account team and the creative team do things like have briefs. I helped manage client expectations so that you weren't on round 543 for, an ad. I was able to write my resume in a way that reflected context, action, result, and highlighted my achievements instead of just my responsibilities. I also used my network. I reached out to people and I said, hey, I want to move back to Chicago. And I didn't lie. I said, I've been laid off. This is what happened. This is what I'm looking for. Who in your network can I meet?
I like how you phrase that. Who in your network can I meet? Not, do you have a job for me? There's a big difference.
That closes the conversation, because oftentimes people won't have a job.
Yeah. Most people
don't. And then
don't.
The conversation's done. Who should I meet with? Who can I talk to? And it's not even to talk to about a job. It's just, who can I talk to?
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the things that we're hitting on in this conversation that I think sometimes as a coach who has a background in marketing and advertising, I forget a little bit, is how much of an edge being in the marketing and branding world gives you when it comes to something like a job search, because it really plays right into the skill set. It's not like I'm a mathematician learning how to communicate for the first time. I'm a communicator learning how to communicate myself, right? So it's a little bit of a leg up. The same way, you know, someone who's in finance doing their own taxes is going to save a lot more money than I would. And like these things like really play into it. So, you know, being in the marketing world helps. And as a marketer, as someone who's like, you know, truly expert in this field, what marketing types of perspectives do you think help you the most in the job search?
Listening for pain points. So identifying the pain points of what, what a prospective employer is looking for. Why is this position open? Is it new? Okay, great. What are they hoping to fill? What is the goal? How are you going to, what does a successful candidate look like? What have they done in the first 3 months, 6 months, year? It's funny because I can market anything.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably market you better than you.
Oh, for sure.
when it comes to me, it's so, for whatever reason, all of a sudden you're just too close, you know?
Well, that's where the marketer gets stuck, right? The marketer is great at knowing what to do, but as soon as the spotlight goes backwards,
it's like, what?
Every marketer freezes.
I have value.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. And that's why, I mean, I took a long time to really, truly craft my resume and make sure that I was highlighting those achievements and accomplishments, not just responsibilities. And so that's how I know I was in charge of more than 25% of the revenue of the office, because I was looking for those numbers.
Yeah.
How many people know that, and that's a lot. It's a lot. But I was also a senior account person. So it is what it is. But so I really think listening to the hiring team, listening to the cross-functional team that you're working with, listening to any direct reports that you may have, and really just trying to find that fit, understand the culture of the company. I used to ask, where do people eat lunch? Do they eat at their desk? Do they go out? Is there a common area? Is there a common area, but people still eat at their desk? That tells you a lot.
Did you ask this during informational interviews or during real interviews?
During real interviews.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had the because I didn't always have the opportunity for informational. Because you can't, you could say, yeah, tell me about your culture. How do people celebrate birthdays? How, whatever. And again, agency world is a little different than other worlds. We're a little more, I don't want to call us frou-frou, but,
woo-woo.
Woo-woo. There's a little more woo-woo going on. But there's so many aspects of a culture, and I've worked for lots of different companies. I've worked for empowering companies. I've worked for companies that have cultures of fear. And let me tell you, it's a lot more fun to work for the empowering cultures.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah, so it was, I'm not sure where,
no worries,
what question I'm supposed to be answering right now.
I think you answered it perfect. I think the other thing that I have on my mind here, because you just mentioned there's cultures that are empowering and cultures that are run by fear, and those toxic cultures I think are really interesting. Have any of your layoffs happen from those toxic cultures?
Yeah, that was my last one.
Oh,
that was the one that I finally was like, you know what?
The straw on the camel's back.
It's time to take matters in full control of my career and my destiny. So my last, and I should say, so now I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working for myself for 2.5 years, and I love it. I love it every single day, no matter how hard it gets, and there's only room for growth right now. But my last corporate job, so I did eventually switch from agency to corporate.
Yeah.
I was there for a little over 3 years, or just about 3 years. And I came in the middle of a huge layoff.
Oof.
So that should have been red flag number one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a red flag, but I really wanted to become a homeowner.
It is funny how life and work tie together in that way, right?
I mean, listen, we all want to make money. Corporate pays well. Sometimes you get great teams, sometimes you get great culture, sometimes you get great products, sometimes you get all of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you even get paid well. And so I was, even though I was coming in the middle of a huge layoff, you know, I got the paycheck I needed to get into a house so that my two kids didn't have to worry about Chicago public school systems and all of the layoffs and funding issues that have been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But I came in and I really liked the team that I was coming into. You know, at the time, I think he was a VP, eventually became an SVP. And my manager, I really liked her. And I was coming in supposedly to run a $10 million budget, right? Awesome. On a brand that was an e-commerce brand, fine. And I was going to have a team, I think of one, like in addition to me. And I was going to be responsible for advertising and branding. I struck it gold. I struck gold, right? And it was great. And I come in and, you know, I'm like loving who I'm working with, learning as much as I can. And it was so fantastic. And I get an RFP out. And I mean, this RFP was the creme de la creme.
Yeah, the world's best.
I had agent. It was. I think it was like 9 pages. And agencies, you know, and I was like, I'm not going to be wooed by these agencies. You know, you will have this date to ask me questions. The questions and answers will be shared with everyone so that nobody has a competitive, you know, nobody has an advantage. There's no insider knowledge. I mean, I was like, square, do not go outside of it. It was just so good. And, you know, so we were evaluating all the companies, and then we, you know, made the offers for the RFPs. And then we were evaluating all of the actual RFPs, which I think there were like 6 companies. And then we had like the actual presentations. And I was about to make my choice. And no, I made my choice and I was about to sign and get my SVP to sign. And then they said, change of direction. We're not going to focus on this brand anymore. You're now going to run email, mobile, and social for all 1,200 of our white label stores.
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, okay. Sounds like a great learning opportunity. Not what I signed up for.
Positivity all day.
You're right. And I was like, okay, but I like to learn. And by the way, this was within, I think, 4 months of me being hired and doing all of that stuff. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. And put on, you know, my smile and went to town and started learning and hired 2 people. And so not only was I new to this industry, but the 2 people coming in were new to the industry. And so I had a social media person, I had an email person, I had an existing text message person, basically, who had been with the company for 10 years. So she had this huge wealth of knowledge and it was great. And we just learned and we worked so hard and we got the marketing ROI and we figured out how many emails should be in a campaign and where, you know, how we could optimize it. And, you know, it was great. And then all of a sudden I was like in the middle of this data exploration. And by then my manager who had hired me was let go because their culture of layoffs, it just continued. Not as massive as when I was brought in, but it just kind of leaked through.
Yeah.
And so I got a new manager. She was, you know, up and comer and somebody, you know, who read the trades. And next thing you know, she's talking about marketing automation systems. And so then I had to learn all about marketing automation systems. And then I had to implement Oracle.
You're hitting on a thing that I want to really call out here, because when we're job searching, and this is something that I see all the time, everyone is trying to be so like polished and honest, like honest to a fault, right? Like people are like, I need to tell them that I am like, I've done this much to the day of this software. And I don't have exactly 3 years. I have like 2.75 years. And like everyone is so focused on these little itty bitty details that are in all the job listings and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're asking for 5 years of experience. I've only got, and we turn around and we accept the job at a company. And then they go, actually, we changed your role. Actually, we changed your manager. Actually, we changed your team. I know we promised you that we're family and that we all love each other, but you're laid off now. And like this disconnect is so fascinating to me, where like the power dynamic is so all over the place in a way. And I don't know, I'm just curious of your thoughts on that, having gone through so many different types of experiences at good places and at rougher places. And do you have any thoughts around how you can keep yourself sane through the process?
Well, I don't know if I can guarantee sanity. I'm still here though, so I guess I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one is just from a female perspective, and I've been guilty of this. And I have coached people with resumes before, like job searching, and I help people remember that when you look at a job, job description, and there's the requirements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Requirements. That means you must have it. So women will read 10 requirements and they'll say, well, I've got 9 out of the 10 of them, but it's a requirement and I don't have that 10th. So I guess I can't apply.
Mm-hmm.
Men will read the same thing and be like, oh yeah, I've done 6 out of 10. I'm good. So there's that. So first, what I would like to say is if you are a woman, do not disqualify yourself. Let them make that choice. Second, there's no loyalty. This is not our parents or grandparents' generation where they worked for companies for 10, 20, 30 years, where they got pensions, where their loyalty was rewarded with watches or, whatever, a trip to Barbados, I don't know, wherever people would go. That's not what's happening. There is absolutely no loyalty whatsoever.
Yeah.
The challenge is how do you show that you're committed while still staying in touch with your network, keeping a pulse on the marketplace, and working with your manager to make sure that you're contributing as much as you can to the company's success, but also to your success.
Yeah.
I used to leave companies in my 20s all the time. I would go to my managers and say, I'm bored. I was at NBC Desktop Video where we were putting roadshows on the internet in the late 90s. And I went to my manager and I said, I'm bored.
Fascinating.
I have developed this system. I can get MSNBC over here and record a roadshow for an IPO within an hour. And that's only because I don't know what the traffic is from Secaucus over to the city. And they didn't know what to do with me. So I wound up leaving and I went to another company. So how do you retain, how do you listen to your employees? Know what their wants are, know how they want to grow. Some people might not. Some people may want to just come in, do their job, check out and go home, right? Or work from home. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's an interesting, I think a lot of times when we think about companies or we think about employees, we always generalize, right? But there's such a wide range. I was talking to someone who does hiring and she said, sometimes someone will come in and they're incredible and I won't hire them. And I'm like, why? She's like, I don't want that person on my team because we're not that kind of team. We're a team of management. I don't even know how to describe it, but that's what she said. And I was trying to process it. And she's like, that person would probably be bored on this team, I guess. I don't really know exactly what she was what her perspective was on it. But I took that as wow, sometimes depending on the company, I've been told in an interview before, I was interviewing at this large university. And they looked at all my startup background and my entrepreneurship stuff. And they just in the middle of the interview said, are you sure you're going to want to work here? We think you're going to be bored. And I was like,
good.
I was like, well, I really want a job right now. So yes, I want to work here. but that, they were right. I would have been incredibly bored in that role, and it would have definitely caused some issues for both them and me. So I think it's really good that you're calling
Exactly.
that out, because we need to find environments that we can stay engaged in. Otherwise, you get that person who's like 15 years in and they're like, their brain is mashed potatoes. They don't even know what's going on anymore.
And again, the thing is, every one culture doesn't fit everybody, right? It's not a one size fits all. Maybe a military person, like somebody who has served for our country, maybe they are much better in a more structured environment. Whereas someone who's a serial entrepreneur, they need the flexibility and the autonomy to grow and experience stuff. A university might have a lot of red tape that you can't get through, and then that just causes frustration. But there's also research universities that are looking for the innovative new whatever, and so maybe you can create some kind of internal consultant position that allows you to stretch and grow. And it's kind of funny that a university position wouldn't allow someone to grow. It's kind of ironic, right?
That's crazy. I didn't even think about it that way. Yeah.
But so what's a good culture for me may not be a good culture for you or for Sally or John or whoever. So it's important to know what kind of environment you work best in. Pre-COVID, a long time ago.
Yeah.
I used to say
10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I used to say, if you want me to thrive, the way I work best is collaboration and meetings and talking with people. If you want me to die, put me in a corner with my computer and nobody around me. And that's because I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
So everything is different. Everything, in terms of, you were asking earlier about, oh my gosh, my mind is totally failing me. This is
I got to stop doing these on Friday afternoons.
I got to start taking notes. But you were asking something about, the different cultures.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, like, the type of environment that we're in, I think there's like this sense of loyalty that is almost brainwashed into people when they get into the workforce, and even before, like college sort of brainwashes us to be these minions or drones or whatever. Not that college is bad. I'm just like, there is like a mindset that you see. And one of the things I like about entrepreneurship and like the hustle culture is like, don't just get comfortable. Like, don't ever get comfortable. Like, there's always something else that's going to come by and blindside you. Get ready. And then there's the unhealthy side of that. But even stoicism, which I study a lot, is like, if you need a cup of coffee to get up in the morning, you're addicted to that coffee and you are weaker because of it, or whatever the thing might be. It could be like you can't take a cold shower and so they take it to a different extreme. But there's all these different things that I think, when we're job searching, when we are in a job and we're scared to leave, when the common thing that keeps coming up in this podcast is, I was let go and it was scary, but when I got home, I felt a sense of relief I had never felt before. And that feeling, I think, is fascinating, because everyone's so scared of getting laid off. I know I was so scared my entire life. I'm like, oh my God, if I get laid off, my career's over. And it's just not true. It's like, there's so many failures that you can have and still keep going. It's unbelievable. And so I think it's interesting to keep in mind that, like, these toxic companies aren't trying necessarily to be toxic. They just don't know what they're doing, right? Or like, there's all sorts of different reasons. So the thing that's really in my mind is, like, you talked through the good layoff, right? The one that went so nice and they were really supportive and they gave you a month. What was the toxic layoff like?
Yeah. So I was there for 3 years. I talked about, how my job shifted within 4 months, and then I was given this huge responsibility, and then I had a team of 3, and then, layoffs were continuing, and you just never knew. They weren't transparent about it. And I think that fear that you were talking about, that fear of the unknown, the fear of being laid off, that can consume you. And you can't live like that. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go in every day, giving your best, putting your best foot forward, treating people with kindness, and helping them out and doing your job. It always cracks me up when in job interviews they would say, well, how would you motivate your team to do their work? And I'm like, well, shouldn't they be doing their work?
Right.
Shouldn't they? Okay. So, and yeah, sometimes you do need to motivate your team. So over a year and a half, then all of a sudden layoffs started to happen. Like it was really bad. First, what happened is the woman that was with me, who had been there for 10 years, she was trying to move up, and I was trying my best to promote her, but I had no say in any kind of advancement, which that's weird, right?
Yeah.
That's weird. And that's just how it was. Obviously I reviewed her. I gave her the best things. I was asking. I just didn't have that power. And it wasn't me. It was how the system was set up. So she left and they didn't replace her. So layoffs come in all different sizes and shapes and look different to everybody. And then,
well, sometimes they just, like sometimes they just make it bad enough for you to quit. Like that's a layoff in a way. Yeah.
And then, so about 8 months later, I found out the day before that my social media guy was going to get laid off. And again, I wasn't part of the decision. And that was a round of much bigger. There were, like, you people go in this room. You people go in this room. This room. Bye. Yeah, I was not at work that day. I don't remember why. I think I was working from home, whatever was happening. And
you're always working from home on the layoff days.
I know, right?
How lucky.
How lucky for me. I mean, I have been in the office when layoffs have happened, and it's just, it breaks your heart, whether it's you or it's the person next to you. And, I reached out to him and, tried my very best to help him. Said, I will help you with your thing. And quite honestly, I don't think he trusted me for a long time, because I think he thought I was part of the reason, and I wasn't.
Oh, wow.
So luckily he eventually did find another job, and I think eventually he heard from other people that I really didn't have anything to do with it. So, there's a lot of reputation that happens. There's a lot of guilt. There's survivor's guilt, right? And then it's, well, who's picking up all of their work?
That's the big question.
That was me.
You.
Yeah. And that was a lot, because that was 1,200 social media accounts.
Oh my
That's a
God.
Lot.
Oh my God, that's so many.
That's a lot. And they're all customized, right?
Yeah.
Because they're all white label. It wasn't fun anymore. I used to say at that job, I come in and like at least every other day, I am laughing so hard I'm crying.
Yeah.
And after a year and a half, it was just tears. There wasn't the laughter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking as fast as I could, as best I could. And I just wasn't finding anything that was out there that was what I wanted to do. I love marketing strategy. And what I was finding was, okay, well, you need to do the strategy, but oh, by the way, you also need to be an Adobe Illustrator.
Oh my gosh. That's the other thing. That's the other thing is all these, when layoffs happen, they tend to take that job the person had, or they take 2 or 3 jobs that people had, merge them together and post it. And they say, well, let's see if we can get one person to do what 4 people did. That's crazy.
Right. Well, and also, so not only what 4 people do, but 4 people that have very specific skill sets.
Yeah.
And, from a strategy perspective, I can look at art and I can tell you what is good and what is not, and what is clear and what is not. But no, I'm not an art director, and I'm definitely not a designer at all. Never claimed to be.
Right.
So I just wasn't seeing anything that was right. So I kept looking, kept working, and started to hear rumors of another mass layoff. And so I actually called HR and said, hey, can I volunteer to be in the next round of layoffs? Because if I get laid off, that would probably save 2 people.
Wow. I've never heard of someone volunteer for a layoff. Fascinating.
Martin, I'm unique.
You're on a different level over here. I like it.
I'm unique. Well, I mean, I wasn't having fun, right? And it was the kind of thing where, you're talking about the emotion that goes along with it. I would drive to work and get these knots in my stomach.
Yeah.
It was awful. Like, I really thought I had an ulcer. I didn't, but it was just like, it was really like, it was aging me. I was starting to look like,
Stress
really
does
physically
some serious stuff to
old.
folks. Yeah.
It really does. It really does. And my gut was just all messed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't worth it. And by the way, it was like things were happening at home with my kids, and they were feeling the effects of it. And, one of my sons really, truly battles with anxiety. And he was really young at the time. And so I was actually working from home so I could be there for him, even though I wasn't like, if anything, sometimes he would like crawl into my lap and just hug me, and I'd be typing. He'd be like straddled,
typing over.
Yeah, and I'd be typing because he was small. He was like 3 or 4 at the time, maybe 5. And so I would just be typing away, but he would get mommy time. And so there was a point where I did actually have to take a family leave, and I did that right around the time, like it was like right after I asked for the layoff. And I said, I'd love to work together and just figure this out. Because I didn't want it to be the unknown, right? Because that unknown of when it's going to happen, that's the worst.
It is.
You can assume it's going to be on a Friday. You can just make that assumption.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be the end of a pay period, just for ease. But just that unknown, it doesn't feel good. And so I had my leave of absence, and then I came back, and the culture was very much one of fear. And at that point, my email person had quit, gone to another job, and they gave that role to somebody who didn't have email experience. So great opportunity for them, right? Because they could learn email, but
they had never even sent an email.
Yeah. And now you're sending complex emails that has customized content for 1,200 different white label brands.
Especially if it has any HTML. Those things are incredibly
No. This was through Oracle Responses.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is like huge databases of millions and millions of people. Just so much. Remember that marketing automation system I talked about? Yeah, that was me implementing Oracle Responses by taking a whole bunch of disparate data systems, mashing them all together, finding email addresses like from some servers that hadn't ever got to our, like,
everyone thinks marketing is Mad Men, but what you just described, you've never seen Don Draper merging data sets.
No, that's advertising.
Yeah.
That's advertising. That's not marketing.
Yeah. True.
Or that's the advertising side of marketing. So, digital marketing is its own beast. It definitely is. And I learned a ton. I learned so much in those 3 years. But so I come back to work, and it was very much like a fire drill kind of culture, very reactive. And when I came back, I had another manager. So this was my 4th manager in 3 years. And they said, you know what? Just document everything you know. Just document everything.
Oh, yeah.
And as soon as they said that, I was like, all right, I see the writing on the wall. How long is this going to happen? And I figured I probably had a month, right?
Yeah.
Because of like leave of absence and what have you. Yeah, I was like, I probably have about 30 days. And I think it was on day 30, I'm driving into work. I had just heard that my best friend's mother had stomach cancer.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. And I'm driving into work. I hear this, and I go to my desk, start my job. my manager, who really nice guy, he comes over, looks a little pale. I think maybe a little touch on the shoulder. And he's like, come with me, please. And I was like, okay. And we start walking. He's like, how's your day? I'm like, well, not great. Just learned my best friend's mom has stomach cancer. And he's like, oh, and didn't really say much. And next thing you know, it's the three of us, me, him, and HR.
And HR.
Poor HR. They get such a bad rap.
I know.
And, every day in that month, when I'm driving to work, that huge pit in my stomach, is it going to happen today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess it's not, And so in that day, I was like, all right. And all of a sudden, the pit disappears. It just gone. And I sit down and they start reading from a script. And I said, guys, can we just be human? Please just talk to me. Okay. And my poor manager, he was nervous and shaky, and he didn't want to have to do it. And, he's looking over at HR like, can I be human? Can we just have a conversation?
And HR was like, should we call the legal team?
So I think there was a little bit of a sticking to script, but I was like, hey, this is okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fine. And, and I think I had outplacement with them too, but it was immediate, pack up your things and thank you.
And what I'm hearing from you over all these different experiences, and we're just going to focus on these two. And I know there's other stories to tell, but that's the advertising world, right? That's marketing and advertising. Yeah. You have to quit and move companies to get more money and get higher roles and things like that. And you're inspiring me to create another series about quitting stories. And yeah, I think I've been told the career suicide thing as well before. And these things, I think you build up a resilience. It's almost like you're inoculating yourself with every transition over time to just be stronger and stronger and stronger. And the first one, it bites, right? But hey, you had a great experience even with the first one. And then maybe you quit some jobs and that inoculates you in a few ways. And then you go through a really rough one and that inoculates you to the negative side of things. And eventually you're just sitting there being like, hey, let's be human. Can we just talk? Because I've been through this before and it's not going to kill me. And I think that's the level that I'm hoping people who are listening can get to in their career, where it's the company isn't working with me anymore. I turn around, I do my own thing. I do that until I find another company, or I expand that to what I want it to be. And so the big thing that I am encouraging folks is to have these experiences you've had to go through it and realize that every time you go through this, you get better and you get stronger and you get more aware and more knowledgeable of how to, navigate these waters. And one of the things that I really would love to hear your perspective on is, you said this was the last straw. This is what made you go start your own thing. And, you and I have known each other a long time. I know you've always had volunteer gigs and other things going on outside of work. How did that happen? How long had you been thinking about it before, or was it something that spurred from this last one? What was the story behind what you're doing today?
So back in 2009, after one of my other layoffs, I wanted to start my own job, but I had a 1-year-old, and people said, and I listened, which was stupid. They said, don't start a job. It's like having a kid. It's like having a baby. You won't have any time. You already have a baby. So I had the idea back in 2009 to be focused on customer strategy and marketing. And so I got laid off in 2017, this last time. And I took time. First of all, after any layoff, give yourself a break, right?
Oh yeah.
Acknowledge it. It stinks. And then acknowledge it. I'm free.
Yeah.
And then acknowledge, oh, now I really need to do something better.
Yeah.
And I need to find something. And what is that? And what was it that I was wanting to do? And that's why it's always so important to stay in touch with your network and know the opportunities, right? So like give yourself some time to detox, have a good cry, have a good laugh, have wine, have, whatever it is. If you need to take a break because you can't carry any negative energy into an interview ever. You can't. There's always going to be something that you learned from a situation, whether it's good people, whether it's implementing a marketing automation system, whether it's running, like you came in to do this job and then it came into this job. Well, okay, look at all the things that I learned and look at how much I grew and look how much marketing ROI I increased, right? So there's always things you can learn and grow from. And so I needed to detox. I did. And so I did. But then the phone started ringing. I wasn't even looking. And the phone started ringing. So I was thrown into the interview process probably about 2 weeks to a month too soon. But I said, you know what? If they're calling me, and I need to brush up. So let's go. And I made it pretty far with a couple, like some I was top 2 candidate. Unfortunately, I was number 2. Sometimes it was just not the right culture, sometimes not the right job, whatever it was. And I kept looking and looking and looking, and I just wasn't finding anything. And I finally said, you know what? I actually worked with a coach. And I said, I'm in like Dante's Inferno. I'm not in hell. I'm not in heaven. I'm just in that holding pattern. And that's crazy for me. Yeah. I can't do this. Like I need direction. I need to know. Yes. And I was like, what is going on? I need direction. And within 4 sessions and a lot of really, really hard work on my part, she was able to hear what I wanted to do, which is what I wanted to do back in 2009. But now it was 2018, 9 years later.
Wow.
With 2 kids, both elementary school age. But it didn't matter because they were elementary school age. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm going to start a marketing strategy consultancy, and I'm going to focus on being the voice of the customer. And I'm going to help people with marketing, mission, vision, branding, messaging, customer journey, anything that's strategy. And I'm going to not work on all of the execution because that was the part of the job I didn't like, because that's the fire drill part of the job. And a lot of people get so focused on the tactics, but they don't have a good strategy in place. And if you take the time to do a good strategy, then your tactics surprisingly work better. Yeah. Not all the time, right? It's still marketing, right? You still have to marketing. Test. And
that's so true.
And sometimes things work and they don't, and you don't know why, but that's fine. You go back and you look at your strategy. And if your strategy is aligned with your mission and your vision, and it's aligned with your goal, a very SMART goal, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based, then chances are you're going to have really good things to work with. And so that's when I was like, all right. And I started with my coach at the end of March. And by the end of April, I had started my company. I had established an LLC in the state of Illinois. It was awesome. And you know what? So here's how I know. Here's how I know I made the right choice. So when I made that choice, I called my best friend and I was like, I'm going to start a consultancy. And she's like, that's great. And I said, I feel so excited. I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted from my shoulders, but I should feel the weight of the world on my shoulders because there's so much to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's how I know I made the right choice for me. And so I could play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game, right? I could, waste time thinking about all the things I could have done the past 9 years. But instead, you focus forward. And I hit the ground running, and I just started networking and started, volunteering like crazy. Because by then, we had moved to Naperville, and nobody really knew me in the business community because my old company was not in Naperville.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just
Naper thrill, as they say,
Yep. So it's been a learning. Oh my God. I'm learning so much. I have my MBA. I am learning
Oh,
so
yeah.
much.
Nothing teaches you
So
more than the
much.
real world.
Oh, yeah. No, but it's like, not only because remember, I have over 20 years of marketing experience in all different kinds of industries, all different, sizes, shapes, you name it. But it's so exciting and I love it. And so over the past 2.5 years, I started off just doing project work. Then I started doing marketing, what I called mastermind workshops, teaching people how to do it. Then I started doing hourly consulting, or what I called you, me, and a whiteboard. And that's like super fun because you just walk in and you're like, all right, what do you got for me? Throw it at me. And then it's just like crazy collaboration and just good time and structure and process and, simple steps that are actionable. And then my client, moves forward and gets their marketing to the new level.
That's awesome.
And then I started mastermind groups, where you meet on a weekly basis for accountability. Last year, I was helping people with their resume. And the part I loved with that was, I don't want to call myself a resume writer because I wasn't writing the resume, but I was digging for the stories to get that context action result and to help them see their value. Because so many people, when they do go through a layoff, they don't feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to say to anybody who's listening is you did contribute value. You did. You have to figure out what that value was. And their loss for not keeping you around, there are other companies out there and they're going to see your value. But you need to look and see what you did to understand you did contribute. You weren't just responsible for X, Y, and Z. You made a difference. You made an impact. And for whatever reason, a business decision had to be made, and that involved laying you off. So what are you going to do? How are you going to move forward in the world and bring your value and your contributions and find that next new company that is going to appreciate you?
Yeah, I love it. Know what value you provided, know what value you want to provide, and take it to the next level. That's where it's at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is, so now today I've got, I've got a mix. I've got mastermind groups, I've got hourly consulting, and I actually have a proposal for a project.
I love it.
So and I'm really
how can people
excited
find you?
about it.
How can people
find you? So people can find me on LinkedIn. I'll drop my, LinkedIn. I'm not as, frequent on Twitter as I should be. Facebook isn't really the best place for B2B marketing. So LinkedIn is really the best way. And I'll drop
we'll put your link right here and people can see it.
My personal and my company one.
Wonderful.
And there's some good stuff and it's fun. It's fun. Like, guys, life is too short. Like, I just want to end with this. Life is too short. You have to do what you love because you work a lot. And with COVID and literally work being in your home now, you got to do what you love. So figure out what that is. Try different things. Worst case, you fail. Get up, try something else, right? Don't keep doing the same thing over and over. Try a different thing. If you really like brand, but maybe CPG is not your thing, maybe pharmaceutical is, or maybe luxury or telecom or whatever. Just like, don't be afraid to try. Put yourself out there and have fun. Because before you know it, you're going to be old. So make an impact. Have fun.
I think we got to leave it at that. Alexis, thanks so much for joining us today. This was wonderful catching up and going deeper into your story. I hadn't heard these before, and it's always great to get, more layers of the parfait, right? So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, or as I say, mahalo.
Mahalo. Thanks so much for stopping by this episode of the Career Therapy Podcast. It's been a pleasure having you. And if you're curious about what we do here at Career Therapy, head on over to www.careertherapy.com to see all of our coaching options, resources, and links to other things we got going on. If you would like to share your story on this podcast, something that you've gone through, a transition you've experienced in your career, whether it's getting a job after college or going through a layoff or getting back into the workforce after raising your family, we would love to hear from you. head over to linkedin.com/in/Martin McGovern and shoot me a DM. Let me know what's going on, and I'd really like to share your story with the world. What we're trying to do here is really normalize the emotional side of the job search because we all go through it. We all have tough times in our careers, and sharing these stories really helps people feel less alone and feel more empowered to take their career back into their own hands and make something of it. So thank you again for stopping by. If you'd like to leave a like or a comment, subscribe or share, or leave us a review on iTunes, and I think maybe even Spotify, we'd really appreciate it. Best of luck to you in all of your career endeavors, and I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.